Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry. With me, as always, is...
There is no God! Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And today we're talking about...
Demonetized yet? Today we're talking
Maybe.
about...
Did channels get demonetized for talking about God?
I don't know.
Or there being no God, I guess?
Yeah, I feel like there's some kind of hot button issue that people might attach to a statement like that from the onset. Should I say something else?
I don't think that's a
back.
Google problem. Today we're talking about Psycho 3, released July 2nd, 1986. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so why don't you take us away here, because this is your franchise.
Just take us away from anywhere?
Just take us away from reality.
I didn't see this. I'll plunge you right back into reality. Memory, sir. No, I saw this for the first time, I think in my teens. I was back in my full swing of like slasher fascination and realized, oh, there are sequels to Psycho, and I've had them on my shelf for many years and I've never watched them. I should watch them. And I think I watched them back to back, if not like one, like a night, and then the next day, next afternoon, I probably watched this movie. And I remember being fascinated.
Do you have because we usually do this when we cover any sort of franchise, just up to the point of what we got, but do you have a ranking of the first three?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You want to hear it?
I do.
Because it is. I did think about this while I was watching it. I kind of went, oh, I guess my ranking is OG, 2, and 3 now. It hasn't always been that way. 2 and 3 sometimes swap, because sometimes I feel like 2's a little boring, and at least 3 kind of goes for it in some senses. But it's not like 2 doesn't go for it. But sometimes, like the way it, like there's something about 3 that kind of like inexorably seems to drive forward, even though it wanders about. It's not as strictly tied to a progression or even a like a strategic
one thing that you said
forward.
when we did do the podcast for 2 is that you said that 2 felt like a TV movie, and like you said that in the most endearing way possible, you know, and I pushed back a little bit on that, because I think you were saying it more just in terms of the violence, but I reminded you that there was like a lot of like visceral moments of like, even when he was like grabbing the knife when Meg Tilly was like just holding it in front of him, and just like his hand sliding,
the impaling of Lila Crane, that was major. But they were kind of standout moments rather than like, oh, this is the kind of movie I'm watching. The rest of the movie was really much more action oriented.
But narratively, like it does have a like a TV movie quality about that, and that's not to like the to speak to the actual quality of the film, because I agree with your ranking, but not that I feel like it just like gets worse with every movie, because I think that every movie has like a completely different feel to it. And with just with your sentiments of 2 and 3, 2 does have that more smaller scale or just like TV movie quality, where this one feels a little bit more cinematic, if that makes sense.
And yet at the same time, there's this will be like my thesis, because I just made a note. I just wrote down like there's something about how can I put? I wrote it down. I can't even find my note here. Just something. Okay, I'll just try to say it because I can't find it. There's something incredibly mindful about the filmmaking here, and it's definitely been plotted out. You can see there was a plan. You can understand intellectually what some of these transitions mean, and I think they work to varying degrees. Some are incredible, and some feel very earnest, if clumsy, like a little film student-ish. And because it is Tony Perkins' filmmaking debut, he hadn't directed a feature prior to this, and he had studied so much so he could understand the language of every person who was working on his crew, so he could converse with anybody at any given time and speak their language and convince them, I know what I'm talking about, and we can go into some examples of that. But I can see that. I can see the investment on Tony Perkins' behalf as a filmmaker, becoming kind of fully realized, like almost in real time, and yet at the same time, he made some decisions that I think were incredible, and he made some decisions that I can see the seams. They were not seamless. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I'd like you to delve more into that as we get into the episode. But yeah, as we know, like there's a fourth Psycho movie, which we'll cover eventually.
It is a TV movie.
That was a TV movie, and that sort of derailed any sort of continuity. So this is kind of like, in terms of the timeline, this closes out the Psycho trilogy, as it were. Mm-hmm. But do you feel like from 1 to 3, is it does it work for you, just in terms of like a whole story?
Yes, but also in a weird way, with regard to cinematic history, it works for me. Because they do all kind of, every single installment up until this point has scratched a different itch, yet there's not such a discombobulation of tones or tonality between them that I feel like, well, these aren't connected. I do feel that there is a continuity that I can follow, and I can see what each chapter I think is attempting.
Well, this is,
or at least I feel.
I mean, this is the sleazy chapter of the Psycho franchise. But was there a Psycho 3 book? Because I remember we were talking about Psycho 2 had a book, but it was completely different from what the movie was, because it was more like the plot of Scream 3, where there was
course. Hollywood.
Yeah.
There was a book called Psycho House, which has nothing to do with this, where I have yet to read it, but because just from the sound of it, it sounds like, do I need to? At some point, maybe I will. But it's from what I understand, it's been a long time since I thought about it, but from what I understand, I believe that someone had kind of gutted the actual Norman Bates household, and I believe even the motel, and kind of made it like almost an atmospheric maze or a tourist attraction for people to come and get scared, and Mother's gonna come get you, and having like teenagers coming out dressed like Mother or Norman or the murder victims and stuff like that. It was largely sensationalistic, and somehow something started happening, and it was almost a question of, had Norman, because I believe spoilers, but I believe, I don't remember entirely, I believe in Psycho 2 we find out that he is no longer with us, but then things start happening in Psycho House that, like, well, is he really dead? Could this be Norman? And I think inevitably you just kind of find out that it's somebody else who's nuts. A copycat killer, as it were. So do I need to read that? No.
Like what
will I? Probably.
Like what they originally wanted to do with H2O, or whatever that story was. Yeah. All right.
Or like what they did with Halloween Resurrection.
Well, that was not copycat.
No, not a copycat, but I mean, like,
just
hollowing out of the house, making it like. to exploit it for like some kind of like capital gain, all of that, make it showbiz. It's all showbiz, kids. I mean, I get that.
Okay, fair enough. Well,
which is probably why that movie didn't work.
Yeah, well, let's get into it. But first, I do want to go over the typical housekeeping stuff. So, if you are new to the Cherry Picker, or if you've been watching / listening for a while and you want to give back a little to us, you can head over to my Patreon. Patreon.com/ZackCherry, ZackCherry. And if you're supporting at any tier, you'll get early access to all of our regular episodes. And if you are supporting at the Freddy Krueger tier, you'll get access to the Cherry Picker After Dark, which is the bonus monthly episode that we run once a month. Last month we did Fuck, Marry, Kill Scream Edition, which was very spur of the moment, very fun, a lot of interesting good feedback on that, and people requesting that we do that for other horror franchises. So
Nice.
that's probably going to happen. But you'll get access to that episode. You'll get access to all of our past episodes. There's like hours and hours of footage of just Edward and I, bickering back and forth about stuff. So really fun stuff. Lots of cult movies that we cover. Lots of lists. Lots of rankings. Lots of fantasy Survivor seasons, but with horror characters and Scream characters. So yeah, check that out. We would really appreciate the support, and we'd like for you to see all of this bonus content that we've been putting out over there. But I do want to thank some Patreon supporters. So to the Michael Myers tier list, thank you to Kyle Beard, Maxime Rivest, Ellie Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horror Slut 95, Traj125, Bruce the Genetic Jackhammer Rando, Gary Blasick, Josh Carr, Michael Boswell, and Ghost Faces, Eric Champney, Sam Levy, Daniel Saturn, Baby Ghoul, Garrison Nichols, and Craig Lynn. So thank you very much to all of y'all. And thank you very much to Jason Voorhees Gallotello, our podcast editor, who without his help, we could not make this possible.
I'm applauding in my heart for everybody who he just named. I usually applaud, and I realized I got distracted by my own notes. So
yeah, probably.
In case anyone's watching, they're going, "Eddie's not applauding."
Just best to do it that way from now on.
Right.
Just use your heart.
The more silence, the better. Yeah. I get it.
Clap with your eyelids. Yeah.
that'd be something to see.
Yeah.
Give myself a seizure.
Just go right up to your microphone, just like ASMR blinking.
It's nature's strobe light. Just blink real fast. Yeah. Do you want a premise?
If you're on a budget for a rave.
Just tell everyone at your rave to blink really fast.
Yeah. Yes, I would love a premise.
Okay. Oh, my phone keeps closing on me. Here we go. You want to hear it in any particular voice?
Do you want to do Mother?
I was thinking about that. Let me see. Let me see if I have it. She's a whore. Okay, I'll try it.
Is she from New England?
Well, that's what she says. She's like, put me in my chair. Chair, not chair.
Not chair.
And yeah, and not whore. Whore. And he's just like, just kill her. And he's like, I won't. Well, maybe I will. Okay, let's try that. When tragedy befalls a troubled novice nun, she re-enters society broken and lost, stumbling onto the grounds of the Bates Motel, where Norman Bates, also broken and lost, attempts to create a safe haven for her, while Mother has other plans, outrunning interference from a tenacious reporter and a lecherous drifter. Will Norman finally triumph as the dominant personality, or will Mother forever seal his fate as a Psycho 3?
Where's this available?
It's currently not streaming on any subscription-based platform, sadly, but it can be located for individual rental or purchase on your favorite streaming service. Or with regard to physical media, you can purchase the 2013 Scream Factory release, a 2018 Universal release that is devoid of any special features on the 2013, or any of the movie collections available, including a 4-movie bundle, which includes the first 4 features, or this one, the full movie collection that I got from Australia, which is region free, and it has 8 discs, including the first 4 features, the remake, the Bates Motel TV movie, and 2 discs that contain the Psycho Legacy. They're DVDs, they're not Blu-rays. Those 2 for the Psycho Legacy. The rest of them are all Blu-rays. I love them.
Yeah. There's no there's no 4K release of this yet?
Not yet. Not of this.
Okay.
I believe Psycho already has it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think. Yeah, I don't think Psycho 2
I got
does.
the
Does
4K
Psycho 2 have?
Psycho. I'm not sure. Well, unless like, because I know like Arrow has it, but I don't know if that's just in the UK.
Right.
And I can't recall because they put out so many box sets of everything. Like every couple of months, it feels like there's a new box set. But I'm not sure if Shout still has 2 and 3, or they've done a 4K upgrade to it. I have not been paying attention.
It would have come up on Blu-ray.com and it did not, so there's that. But they're bound to eventually. I mean, these are
absolutely
big time sequels of a major IP.
Everyone talks about the Psycho franchise in terms of
everyone. Psycho 2 underrated in not in Screevy, your favorite.
Yeah. I mean, is it underrated though? I mean, like, I guess underrated in the fact that like not enough people talk about it, but underrated
Maybe.
to me means like it's a movie that's considered to not be good, and then it's actually much better.
Maybe that it deserves more flowers these days than it's getting, because I mean I think it deserves to be memed as much as the other more memeable slashers. Well, your Michael Myers and your Ghost.
I mean, they also said that what was it? It was like Candyman or the remake or whatever they called it, and they're just like both. And I mean, like the new one was good. I liked it a lot more than I think that one is underrated. But like to put it on level with the original was a little silly. So I don't know what.
Then that would be what you would say if you were sitting with Mindy
underrated
or Kirby.
I mean, okay, we're not going to get into that, but
we've had that conversation.
But speaking of Scream references, because this is one of my favorite that we actually talked about on the Scream 3 episode, because you sort of posited a different version of Scream 3, which was very like Sydney centric, where she would have been like living up in like wherever her house was, but it would have been like Norman Bates in Psycho 3, where she's getting these visions of her mother, but it was like the mother telling her to go to Hollywood and kill the cast of Step 3. Which, I mean, in all fairness to that,
Jesus.
And what Scream 3 was at the end, like Roman's plan was to frame Sydney as the one who had done it all. So, I mean, I think that there could have been an argument for infusing that sort of reference or storyline into the movie to make her I was making
Roman's movie for him.
I mean, you did better than Roman could have done.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I did listen to the commentary for this one because I remembered hearing it a long time ago, and I don't listen to commentaries as much as I should anymore, even my favorites. So I need to make more time for that in my life. But Charles Edward Pogue does commentary on the special editions of this movie, and he's interviewed with somebody, so he's not just kind of like talking and then quiet. Like there's somebody continually keeping the ball rolling, and you get a lot of. It's not so much attention to the structure of the film at large, because Charles Edward Pogue was not on set like every day that they were shooting or anything like that. He's much more just kind of like, if this is in the hands of someone I trust, with Tony Perkins, he did. So I'll only visit when it kind of tickles my fancy, you know? Yeah. But he did get a few phone calls from Tony Perkins on set, just kind of like letting him know like what the studio wanted in this vein and checking if he had any opinions about like how this should go, just to bounce ideas off of him. He was very much a collaborator. So you get much more of a feeling like you're sitting there watching the movie with the screenwriter than you do somebody who's watching the movie for the first time in like years and barely remembers anything. So that's good. But he brought up why did I bring that up? He was talking about, what was I talking about?
You're talking about the commentary. You're talking about
the commentary. But why did I bring it up? I don't
Well,
even
we were
remember
because we
now. I
were
talked too
talking
much.
about the Scream 3.
Oh, the original.
Yeah.
Okay. The original idea that Charles Edward Pogue had, because he was brought in by the studio.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't approach them. They approached him because he's also in the theater. He's a playwright. And he had written a few screenplays. And actually, he wrote the screenplay for The Fly, which was released the same year as this. And they brought him in and asked him if he had a pitch. And he said, not really. Because he thought he was going to be told, here's the job, here's what we would want you to write, are you interested? And they didn't have any ideas. They just knew they wanted a sequel because part 2 was so successful.
Yeah.
So he said, well, give me a week and I'll think of something. And they said, good. Because I think sometimes in Hollywood, like the people who come in enthusiastically with like a million ideas probably turn them off, because I think they see them down the line as being less malleable, less just less of somebody who is going to be someone you can bounce ideas off, or someone you can give notes and they will take them, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So they liked the fact that he didn't quite know, but that he was going to think about it, because I think it meant something to them that this movie be, of substance, Yeah. So he said he got the idea literally walking back to his car in the parking lot, and then sat on it all week and came up with 2. The first idea for what Psycho 3 was going to be was he was going to bring back Janet Leigh, not as Marion Crane, but as a therapist who was helping Norman work through all of his trauma from the first 2 movies. And things were going to start coming out in him because there's something about the therapist that he can't shake that reminds him of Marion Crane. Mm-hmm. And we all know what it is because it's the same actress, but he doesn't. So... And he brought that up, and he also had this idea that he actually ended up coming to fruition, because the studio didn't like the idea of bringing Janet Leigh back because they thought she was too long in the tooth. They thought she was a little past her prime, and that audiences weren't going to show up for an actress of her age.
She had blue hair and varicose veins.
I'm wondering if like that kind of line was put in as just kind of like, well, fuck you, Universal. Yeah. Here, this is who you are. But there was still like some pushback, I think, a little later in that vein of like kind of pushing up against like what a woman in these movies is supposed to look like, as opposed to a man can look like anything. Mm-hmm. One of those, bygone Hollywood era kind of ideas that like the man can continue to age like Gregory Peck style in The Omen, but his wife must be young and fertile like Lee Remick. So they wanted somebody young and hot, and he's like, well, I have this other idea then about a nun who, witnesses or experiences a tragedy. It feels remotely or directly responsible, and doesn't know who she is, and is just as lost as Norman is, and they come together and they have a love story, and they're like, okay, great, we want that. So he wrote it, and this is that's what this is.
We want that, and we want Diana Scarwood to play her. How did she get involved? Like, did they seek her out specifically? Like, did they see Mommy Dearest and they're just like, we want her?
I mean, she was working pretty consistently in the 80s anyway. So, I mean, I don't know how many people came out of Mommy Dearest and people were like, we must work with her, outside of like, gays.
Yeah.
But even given like the nature of the 80s and how closeted, a lot of homosexuals were at that time who were working within the industry, and how some of the most homophobic people were gays who worked in the industry at that time. I don't know if a lot of people were rushing to her door, but I do think she was a perfect choice. I don't recall if she auditioned or not, but I do know for a fact that when she was offered the role, she jumped at it because she loved the opportunity of sinking her teeth into this part. In fact, Jeff Fahey had just come off of his first big Hollywood film, Silverado, and he threw a party where he invited all the cast and crew of Silverado and all the cast and crew of Psycho to just kind of like bridge some kind of gap for himself professionally, and just have fun. It's a very Hollywood thing to do. And Diana Scarwood went, and so did Charles Edward Pogue, the screenwriter, and she cornered him at the party and said, I have so many questions and I just have all these notes. And I think she literally took out a notebook and just started going over things with him, questions that she had, because she was so fascinated by the opportunities that this role was posing to her. She just wanted to know, is this, I'm getting this, is that what it, and he was just be like, either yes, absolutely, or no, but that's great. Bring that up to Tony when he's directing.
Did she win a Razzie for Mommy Dearest? Was that a thing back then? Like
I know for a fact Faye did. Faye totally did. I don't remember if she did. You have to look it up.
Yeah, because there's just like every time I've only seen, I'm sure I've seen more, but the 3 movies that we've covered at least that I've seen her in was this, obviously, Mommy Dearest, and then she was also Michelle Pfeiffer's best friend in What Lies Beneath.
Yes.
And playing a much different role. It's and she's unrecognizable, because I think like, even you didn't see it at first, and we're just like, oh my god, that's right. Diana Scarwood.
I had forgotten that she was in it.
Yeah, like she's really like bubbly and has like this very eccentric energy in that, but it's dialed down a lot more than where she was in the 80s, where like everything was like really emphatic and like these intense, like there's this intensity to her which I find hysterical. Like I love it.
Yeah.
And I guess it could be considered overacting, but it's perfect for this role. And
it's always connected though. That's the thing. I don't ever feel like she's just kind of like throwing away her performance. It's just what true camp ought to be, in my opinion, which is just consumed by your character, by the situation, by the stakes of it all, and play to the back of the house. But it's all coming from somewhere. There's another example of her doing that in a movie she did shortly after this. It might have been 1990. I think it was late 80s, though. Farrah Fawcett made a film called Extremities, based on a play about a woman who basically traps a man who attempts to assault her. He follows her back to her home and attempts to assault her again, and she ends up trapping him in her chimney. And her friends drop by, and they know that somebody tried to assault her earlier, like in a parking lot, and that he's followed her to her house, and they see that he's trapped. And I think he's even like bug bombed in the face, so he's got these horrible wounds on his face and irritation and everything like that. And at one point, Diana Scarwood is one of Farrah Fawcett's friends. Farrah Fawcett leaves with, I think Alfre Woodard was the other friend, and the two of them leave. Diana Scarwood grabs a bottle and immediately starts drinking to try and cope with the scale of what's happening to her. And the guy who's trapped inside of the chimney starts trying to appeal to her sympathy, saying, "My face hurts, could you please?" And she's like, "Shut up!" Just guzzling booze by daylight and crying and screaming at this guy because she doesn't want to hear it, but she also feels really guilty about basically incapacitating this man who could have potentially really hurt her friend. She's amazing. Anything that woman does, I think she's a perfect candidate for this film too, because that's exactly what this movie needs. Is because I feel like what Tony Perkins is doing too, and Jeff Fahey. Probably the calmest performance by one of the principal performers is Roberta Maxwell's as Tracy Venable, because she's the one who's of the most sound mind, but she's also in a weird way plays like the villain of this piece. A lot of people have identified over the years, myself included, that she's doing everything right, everything you would expect a person with good sense to do in the situation that she's in as this reporter, because she's trying to keep people from getting killed. She is sympathetic to this man who's suffered these incredible I keep saying trauma, but anyway, he's been through an ordeal, let's put it that way, several ordeals over several years, and she's sympathetic to him, but she's also not willing to give him an inch, while the rest of the town is willing to just kind of shrug it off and go, well, Norman paid his debt to society, so I'm gonna look the other way.
She's kind of an anti-hero. She actually reminds me a lot of Gale Weathers. Which I like to think that maybe she is the inspiration for Gale to a certain extent, but it makes sense with this franchise, because there is always like there's this blurred line of like morality between the characters. Like in Psycho 2 with Lila, and just like,
Yeah.
you know, she is the villain of the movie, but like in her mind, she is the victim, and you know what she's
Yeah.
doing is right. And the movie presents her as like, you know, being both. So you
Yeah.
can kind of choose, you know, which side of the spectrum you want to go along with, and you know, especially everything with Norman. So I
Yeah.
like that about the Psycho franchise, actually, that you know she can be this antagonistic force, but at the end of the day, she is kind of the final girl of the
Yeah.
movie, and the
100%.
hero, and it all makes sense. The
Yeah.
only thing that like doesn't, I mean, it's a strange movie, but the for Maureen, sorry,
Yes. Yeah, I know.
another Scream connection is like when they have the warrant and they're looking at the house, and then she just kind of pops out and she lies for Norman, and she's just like, he was with
Yeah.
me out like until 6 o'clock in the morning. And then directly after that, the reporter, or the what's her name, Tracy, is just like, she's coming with me, and she's clearly disturbed
Yeah.
by Norman. She's even cold to his touch, and she leaves, and then we don't really see, like, she's just taken back to the psychologist
Yeah.
at the hospital, the
priest.
priest. Yeah, dual roles there, and
Right.
the next time we see her, she's just sitting there and she's just like, no, I have to go back to Norman. Like it's just like, did I miss something? Was there just like this shift? Or maybe she is kind of, you know, wackadoodle that it just got to a point where she's like, no, I belong there, and I'm gonna go back. And clearly, like, they're, you know, that's the thing, like, and her death is entirely accidental, because it's just
Yeah.
like, it's because his hands are all mucky, and then like mother screams from the other room, and you know, he loses grip on her and she falls backwards into the arrow. But I don't know, I like to, I wonder what, you know, if those crazy kids could have made it work, like what the future of that would have been, like just them running the motel together.
It was actually a point. It was the one point of contention, and by contention, they didn't have an argument even. They just had a very civilized, calm conversation where nobody's voice escalated. According to Charles Edward Pogue, he said, between he and Tony Perkins, it's the only thing they disagreed on in the whole movie. In Charles's original script, Norman is standing at the top. He's in complete shadow, so Maureen can't see anything, but she's as idealistic as she is in the movie. And she moves toward him to kiss him, and she's the aggressor. All of their physical interactions in Pogue's original script, she initiated. And there's a few instances in the movie where Tony Perkins decided, no, let Norman take the bull by the horns here. The audience wants it, and he's right. We do. But but because these two crazy kids, you're right. But when she kisses him, as she's kissing, all of a sudden there's a, and you see that Norman has stabbed her. And the reason that it happens that way is because there is no longer, at that point in the movie, you're supposed to feel that there is no longer a dividing line between Norman and his mother. And there's some line that Norman says, I don't remember what it was, but it's in Norma's voice. So it's almost like she can just kind of dip in whenever the fuck she wants now. And he has no control. And he comes back just in time to watch her tumble down the stairs. And Tony Perkins, I think this is one of the things he called him for, and told him, Norman can never kill anyone. And I hear that and I think, except Emma Spool and his mother and her lover and Marion Crane. But he didn't kill Marion Crane. But I'm like, okay, but I understand what you mean, like on screen in terms of these like murders that happen. As far as the lore is concerned, Norman is not the perpetrator of these murders. The only murder that he's committed in recent years was something that was a self-correction he felt because it was the only thing he knew. It was familiarity with, well, I need to have a mother, but I can't have a live mother because I don't know how to live that life. So I'm just going to kill this woman and she'll be my mother now, and I'll just put her up in the window because that's what I know. But even then, is that Norman consciously like making that decision, or is it almost like an instinctive grip toward something comforting, toward something that he, can understand and can exist with, because change hasn't been very kind to him in the previous movie. I think I like the accident because it's almost like I feel like it loads the gun for Norman even more against his mother. Like, he has enough reason to be pissed off with. I mean, it's not even Emma. It doesn't matter what it's Emma Spool or Norma Bates. Like, this concept of mother, this domineering force in his life that says you must only, be bound to me, basically chained to me, and must never reach for any life beyond me. I think if it happens accidentally, it's almost like, look at what kind of destruction I'm capable of, even if mother isn't in the driver's seat. Like, look at what I can lose. Mm-hmm. None of this would have happened. She wouldn't have come after me if I wouldn't have been hiding up there punching the knife with my hand. One of the most, when he does that, it's like right on par with him gripping the knife, the blade from Meg Tilly in the second movie. When he punches and the noise that it makes, I wince and I go, and then the blood dripping out of his hand, I'm like, ugh. But I think, I don't know, there's something about it that kind of preserves his innocence a little bit more. I don't know. I feel like I understand why Tony Perkins didn't want us to not know whether Mother or Norman deliberately stabbed her with a knife. I feel like we all might have just given him the benefit of the doubt and assumed it was Mother, but would we be rooting for him? Because also they changed the ending. The original way it ended is, and I think you can tell, because talk about switching gears, the Sheriff Hunt, the one who's been defending him like the whole movie, is walking him to the car, and he's just like, boy, they're never going to let you out. You're going to be in the loony bin for life, Norman. And he gets packed into the car, and he looks out the window and just says, but I'll be free. I'll finally be free. And then they just drive away, and the only thing he sees as he's being driven away is the window, and Mother is no longer a presence in the window. It's just an empty rocking chair going back and forth. And that's the end of the movie. Very, bye, Mom. And then, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. And the studio wanted, like, what they called a De Palma moment. They wanted the Carrie arm coming out and grabbing Amy Irving. Yeah. And that's when Charles Pogue thought, well, okay, I'll give you your arm. So he wrote the moment that's on screen. Both he and Tony Perkins thought it negates everything that came before it, so they won't leave it in, and they did, because familiarity. Because I think it's one of those many nods in this movie that an homage to this movie really leans into the homage, if at all, especially toward the first movie, to the point where I don't find it distracting and I don't feel like it derails, but I do start to kind of go. In this particular screening, I remember I started kind of going, wow, there are more than I even remember. Like, this is like half Psycho and half Psycho 3. And sometimes to varying degrees of success. Sometimes it works great, and sometimes I'm just like, well, we didn't really need that, but okay. I don't know. Did anything derail you?
No, I'm just thinking of that, like the ending of the however you've phrased it, but the carry arm coming out and grabbing her. What if it was just what Sinister did? I mean, this is horrible, but they'll just like slowly push in on the on the window, and then all of a sudden, like, Bagul comes out of the sun.
Mother just peeks in.
Not even in the window, but just like in front of the camera outside.
That makes the ending as it stands look great.
We're just gonna get him with one more jump scare.
I mean, you were right when you called this the sleazy chapter, basically, because I feel like the second one, what it borrowed from the original was the strategy and the intention, kind of like, of the inexorable move forward. Like, it seemed very plot driven and very action driven, and a lot of hushed tones and a lot of wondering what a lot of mystery. Whereas with this one, the mystery's gone. Like, we know Norman's the killer, and we know that he's far gone. But it does lean into, I think, maybe a little bit more what the first movie couldn't, like what they had managed to achieve with glamour, because it was in black and white, so the redness of the blood was deadened, and the fact that you don't see gore, the fact that you don't even really see anybody going to the toilet like you do in this movie, but you see a toilet flushed. You know, it's almost like, here are all these things that you've seen happen in your life, but you've never seen it on a screen in 1960. Then you flash forward to 1986, and it's kind of like, well, here's the things that everybody else is doing, kind of. Do you know what I mean? But thematically, I think it still works because it's about, you know, this underside of humanity, like the secrets we keep, but in an extreme way, because it's much more about like a day in the life of Norman Bates, full tilt, full, you know, off kilter, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a sleazy undertone, but then there's like Duke, who I just feel like brings a new level of sleaze. Like the whole scene with like the lamps and whatever the fuck is going on there.
I mean, originally Jeff Fahey was supposed to, I think it was in the script that he was supposed to just pin her to the wall and just kind of like devour her, you know, sexually or whatever. And basically all of the bravado of, oh, I'm going to get you off, and then only concerned with getting himself off. And then they have the altercation that they have. But,
well, this guy is like as twisted and deranged as Norman. Like he's got those like the naked women pictures on the wall with like the eyes cut out, or it seems like sunglasses shapes cut out because he couldn't just like draw them on.
No, because that's not his way. He's a sick fuck.
Yeah,
like he's 100%. I think he's arguably even sicker than Norman, because at least Norman is torn about the actions that he's committing, whereas Jeff Fahey's like, I mean, what I love about the way the character is presented is that we don't know whether we can trust him when he's introduced. Then we get in the car with him with, you know, Maureen, and he has that flashlight thing, which just like going up her skirt and stuff like that. And then just basically abandoning her in a desert in a rainstorm fuckhole, just piece of shit. Then when he sees her again, tries to make amends and say, hey, the only thing that's going to happen, nothing's going to hurt. No, most dangerous thing that's going to happen to you out here is that you might die aborting him. That's it. You know, like hands off. Sorry, I was a little road weary, I think is his excuse for his behavior.
It's very like South Park Cartman of just like, just trash talking Kyle to the moon and back. And then being like, oh, but wait, I want to get invited to the birthday party. So just being like, I know we had some bad times before, but like I'm changed now, and we're friends, right?
Or even that like kind of abusive parent or abusive partner mentality of like, I just beat the shit out of you, and my apology is you're all right.
I kind of wanted like her to kill him.
That would have been great.
Yeah,
I would have loved that.
Imagine like. And then maybe just give a little bit more purpose for her coming back and doing that. And then she could be like, Norman, we can be together. I killed, you know, and it's almost like it would have been like a bonding thing, and then falls down the stairs into the arrow anyway. And
ironically, it would have made her an ideal kind of like match for him. The two of them could have like had their own little Addams family going on. But no, I mean, she could have continued the line. They could have had other little Bateses that are, you know, little psychotics or psychopaths.
I just imagine like if it's, of course, Diana Scarwood just like operating the motel with Norman, and then she'd be like, I'll get the guests out on time, okay?
Or even like, I mean, because she's like blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and seems so kind of like prim and proper, like there could be a wonderful kind of bad seed, fully grown, you know, like angle to her where she's just like, you know, the dutiful wife and the happy little homemaker, and then she's like grinding people into meat pies in the basement.
And they could have like Psycho 4 could have been like just a time jump, and they could have cast the actress who played young Christine in Mommy Dearest to be their daughter.
Mara Hobel. Oh my god, I would have loved that.
Because this was
to be their daughter.
How many years? I guess this was 5 years later after Mommy Dearest. Or no, well, this one, a sequel would have been. They could have churned one out a year later.
Yeah, they totally. It I mean, everybody. Every other franchise was.
Yeah. 1987 Psycho 4, and we're like now 15 years in the future.
Right. But I think just sorry to Jeff Fahey back of it all. Like the thing with the lamps and everything, I think was his idea. I think he doesn't even remember entirely, but in interviews he says, "I think that was my idea," and I don't say that to take it, but I just say it to make a point of like Tony Perkins as a collaborator, like was very open minded and very willing. Like if there's something you weren't comfortable with, he was. But at the same time, he put Kat Shea is the name of the actress who plays. I don't even remember her character's name right now, but she's the one basically who comes in, Patsy Boyle, the girl who comes in and wakes up Maureen when she's asleep in her room with the door open while the homecoming celebration's going on. She has those just two great lines that make me laugh. One of them is just like, when some of these drunken, horny bastards running around, it's not such a good idea to keep her door open. And then later, just like when she's sitting on the toilet and in walks Mother Bates, and she's just kind of like, "Sorry, this is occupado." And I'm like, "You bitch."
Well, what's funny about that is like, it's like the reaction to it is like, first there's like, "Oh, like, what are you doing in here?" And then it's like no communication, just like, well, what? Yeah. It's almost like the Halloween PJ Souls, like, well, where's my sandwich? Aren't you gonna say anything? Like, this is going nowhere. That's a great.
She should have just stood up. She should have just stopped peeing, stood up, and just dialed.
And we hear the funny thing is we hear the pee, but that's such a great kill. And then like the stabbing into the toilet paper roll, because she grabs it and she's falling down and it just like unspools, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, don't waste it.
Yeah, we're not gonna waste that. I mean, but okay, answer me this: do you ever go to the bathroom and sit down where the seat is up, and then turn around and go, "Ugh, men."
No, but it doesn't mean I have never. It's not something that I do with regularity, but I have sat. I think back when I was a kid, when I was like half asleep or something and I wasn't really paying attention, I just kind of assumed the seat was down. And then I think a lot of people have had that experience where you just kind of sit down and like,
maybe once.
But I don't go, men.
Well, I'm just asking because you do on other occasions. But I just thought it was funny that she breaks into the office and uses the bathroom and then has the gall to like criticize the seat placement.
Also the fact that it's a bathroom that finally kind of suddenly exists. Like I don't remember ever seeing a restroom door or even having an allusion to a restroom in the parlor or in the office area. Where would it go? As far as like a floor plan, maybe I need to watch Norman bringing Marion into the parlor again and see if it's in there somewhere or in his confrontation with Sam toward the end. But I don't remember ever seeing anything that even implied there's even a closet there. It just looked like office, parlor, 2 rooms.
It's like the Simpsons house where the floor plan is never the same. It's like where's the access to the basement? It's like there's certain rooms they're just never seen, but they are there. So yeah, I'm sure that there's I mean, it would only make sense. Like you're in there all day, all night. You got to. I mean, is he gonna run up to the house every time to
I could see
drain the dew from his liver?
Drain the dew. But I remember you when we talked about Psycho 2, you made an allusion like that, like The Shining, to the Psycho house in Psycho 2, like how you just kind of felt disoriented and not quite knowing. All of a sudden staircases appear and suddenly there are entrances here and there, and it's like, well, what room are we in and what area of the house? But,
Mother's bedroom is huge. It's like, and it takes up the entire side of the upstairs of the house, it seems. Because like the door would be like, just based on the layout, the door would be closer to the back of the house, but then like the window where she sits is at the front, and the stairs, like there's like I guess goes beyond that, like towards the front. So there's clearly, I mean, maybe there's like a room at the front on the other side, but it would seem kind of pointless to have that there otherwise. But there seems to be all these rooms at the back, and it looked like there was like a mini staircase or just like a landing above that. which
Yeah.
we see in. I mean, we might have seen it in the first movie, like when Lila goes to investigate. Did we see that there?
We didn't see the back staircase. We saw like the stairs going down to the basement, and we saw the main staircase. We never saw anybody coming from behind. That was for the second one, Robert Loggia making his surprise
Loggia.
entrance on the landing when Meg Tilly's on the phone and stabs him accidentally. And
No,
I thought it was
Norman,
you.
I didn't mean to stab him. I thought it was stabbing you. Norman, I'm not Mother. I'm Mary. I want a fucking. We need like a sequel to, I guess, Psycho's 3 at this point, and just have Jennifer Tilly. Because why not? Just have her come back and be the sister, like the long lost sister of Mary,
of Mary?
who's like
Yes.
Lila, like just looking for revenge again for Lila
And then
and
somebody.
Mary.
And then somebody does a double take and tells her, "I'm sorry, but you look exactly like Jennifer Tilly." And she goes, "I get that all the time." But I do want to say, I made an allusion earlier to kind of like the film student aspect of this movie, and like I said, like there are a lot of things that are artistic strokes that I feel are made throughout this movie that I just want to like pinpoint a few of them. Like the first one is probably one of the clumsier ones for me. It's the transition. Because it's like, I can see what you're doing. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't know. I just thought like, oh, baby's first movie. When there's a transition when we're in the bar with Tracy and with Duke, and on the television set there are all these rapids, and then we change the angle, and all of a sudden we see another television set with rapids on it, but they're on the TV in the hotel parlor where Norman is just kind of like sitting there, and I'm just kind of like, okay, well, that's an unnecessary transition, but a transition.
I liked
nonetheless.
it. Because it wasn't the way that they did it. They didn't change the angle. Because the bartender turned to look at the TV.
Right.
I thought, and then we were kind of like
Like,
POV
ooh, let's
on
look
it.
closer.
Yeah,
Exactly,
and then it kind of.
and then all of a sudden. Yeah.
No, I liked
again,
that.
I was,
and then there was another
mad
one
at it,
where,
but I saw it.
Yeah.
Like it took me out of the movie, and I just kind of like, oh, I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
I like the transition that happens right after that, which is the knife, the reflection. It looks like, I think it's when Maureen has just gone through the door of the bathroom while Norman is peeking at her.
Mm-hmm.
Another allusion to one where we see the angle of the eye with the light on it while he's looking. And the fact that she closes the door, and then it's the same thing, kind of like a close-up of what looks to be the bottom of the door with the light coming out, and then all of a sudden it transitions to the knife reflecting light off of it while Norman is standing there pondering what his next move is going to be. That I actually thought was pretty incredible.
Well, there was another one when he was leaving the hospital room, and then like suddenly he's in Mother's bedroom.
Yes, love that.
Yeah.
Very theatrical.
Very, very. I mean, I know this is way later, but very Saw 4 with those crazy fucking transitions. They went hard with those.
It also, I don't know, in a weird way, I just kind of got a sense that, because then we go into, I think that's when he makes the discovery that he's dressed up as Mother, and he opens the shower curtain and Mary's there in the bath, and we see that great, I think it's a really, really gruesome shot of her wrists with the blood just kind of like going out of them because she's in the tub trying to off herself. And but the blur through her haze and through, I think, even the smoke and the fact that she's losing so much blood, like she's not quite conscious, so she doesn't see Mother standing there holding the knife with the light reflected off of it. She sees Mary, the visage of the Virgin Mary, holding a crucifix, and assumes that I'm going to be saved. And I always wanted to see what happened, because then we get a really weird transition, just like from behind Jeff Fahey with his eye going down the barrel of the camera. And he just starts saying his line, and then his eye line just kind of drifts over to Roberta Maxwell. But anyway, I always wanted to see, so what happens? Is Mother like Michael Myers, like well, I can't kill you if you've already offed yourself. Like, you took the fun out of it. Like, if you're not going to be scared and scream and run or try to defend yourself, then I'm out. And then Norman just kind of woke up and thought, oh, shit, and then decided to help her.
Yeah.
I mean, because we don't see it,
or
but
maybe
that's
it's just
what's
like
implied that happened.
the blood. Because it's just like, remember, like in the first movie, like, oh God, mother, bloods. Like, that's his trigger to like kind of come back. So maybe seeing that before was the thing that knocked Norma out of there. But all I could think is like, cause she cut her wrists in the like a cross, and all I can think of is in The Craft when Bonnie and Rochelle were just like, oh, you even did it the right way, like vertically down.
For a long time in Hollywood, when people would cut their wrists, they would do the across because not the right way, because I think they didn't want to advertise, well, this is how you do it. But I remember even kids in the playground telling me like, that's not the most effective way to do that. And they'd be like, how do you know? Yeah. Okay, I'll carry that in my back pocket for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. But I do love that, like, immediately after like whatever exchange Tracy has with Duke after the bathtub discovery and everything, we get another shot of a nurse standing in exactly the same position as Mother and Mary, except what she's holding is a thermometer. And all I could think was, where did that just been? Like and maybe I've seen this movie one too many times that I just kind of like, my mind just goes there now, like, because it is kind of gross, this movie. And I mean, and gross without ever escaping humanity. I feel like these are all things that actually happen, no matter how sensationalized they may be. But except for, I mean, one of the most extreme things I think that happens in this movie is really, really early. And it's already kind of like creeping you out, because you see the birds feeding in the feeder, and then they drop, and then you see Norman's feet going into the shot, and he just picks them up, and you're like, oh my God, the silent killer, crazy. But it's, still kind of soft and gentle the way he's killing them, so he can stuff them, because that's what Norman does. The thing that kind of sends me over the edge is when we see him opening that one bird, trying out eyes, spooning the sawdust into it, and then the bird gets put down, and the spoon goes into some peanut butter and starts getting put on some little circular crackers, and you just see off camera, you hear the crunch of him eating, and you're like, okay, he's not okay. Like, he's this. Well, that creeps me out probably more than anything else in this movie.
And then the sheriff eating the ice cubes and like the blood on it.
That's one of the most Hitchcockian moments I feel in this movie. I think Hitchcock would have been like, oh, I like that.
but not so much for the rest of the movie.
Well, because to hear Charles Pogue talk, he wrote a script intending to also kind of like create as much homage to the first film, not just in terms of like the visual homages that they make repeatedly, but he didn't want to see a knife go into a body once. He didn't want us to focus on the blood in a scene, even if there was blood. He was actually really fond of the way Tony Perkins handled the phone booth kill, because it was essentially cribbing off of the shower scene. But what I liked that it added was the bare feet stepping on the broken glass, and the fact that she had her little turtleneck top had not completely pulled over her face entirely, so only her eyes were exposed. So there's this feeling of encasement, of being trapped, in addition to being trapped inside the booth itself. I don't know if it's at an extra level.
It was reminding me a little bit of Tenebrae with Tilda, with the sweater, and then except he slashes the hole in it. Where she first like sees like the face of the killer before he slashes her again.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, we've already established in many of these pods how many of these American directors crib off of Argento, maybe without even knowing it. But so I agree with you there. But I mean, one thing that I appreciated, I think, was the same thing I get from Argento when I'm enjoying it at its most kind of like gory and exploitative, is that I don't know, something about the lushness of the color at that moment, like the red and the yellow, and I think she's wearing little jean shorts, so it's all these primaries filling the screen with the shadows in the background. And there's something about it that feels otherworldly, like not quite naturalistic because it's so vivid. So it's maybe almost like you're a sensory deprivation initially, so your senses are heightened suddenly, like all of a sudden the colors are brighter during the kill, and so the tastes are going to be, the noises are going to be more emphatic, like it's almost like they turned the volume up on everything. And I thought that was a really effective situation that they had, because also you never once see the knife going into her body, as opposed to the toilet kill, where I agree, I like that kill too, but it does feel much more like it belongs in a Halloween movie or a Friday the 13th.
Well, I mean, you even got like the lamp going back and forth. It's very Friday the 13th part 1. You'll always be plain. What is like Marcy?
I said Lizzie. When I looked in that mirror, I said, Lizzie, you'll always be plain.
She's so great.
Yeah.
But, I also, there's something to Norman Bates in this movie too, and I think I used to attribute it to, well, there's no one really to rein Tony Perkins in, but I feel like he knew what he was doing. I feel like there's a hyperactivity to him in this movie, but I've really come to like it over the years, because it's not just Norman reverting back to his old ways. This is the most nervous we've ever seen him. This is the most extreme he's ever been pushed, and the longest he's probably ever had to hide these things, and also with full knowledge of exactly what his waking life, like what other people would perceive him doing while he's kind of blacking out or whatever. He's more aware of his actions than he ever has been.
He's like really defensive when they're coming to it, like in Psycho 2, because like the general attitude of the town, like like you have a lot of people just being like very patient and understanding and sympathetic towards him, but he was like always cooperative and like, oh yeah, because he didn't know what was going on. But here it's just like he's just like, why won't you leave me alone? And blah, blah, blah. I love all his like facial tics too.
Oh yeah.
He's very. This is what begat the David Arquettes and the Paul Rudds of the 90s.
Maybe. There's probably something to that, but also I think it's interesting because one of the things we pointed out when we discussed Psycho 2 was his kind of ambivalence about Mary, like in her drama, like when she's just kind of like, I don't know, do you think that I should have gone back to him? It's like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. And, I'm just trying to stay out of it, just trying to stay healthy. You can stay here as long as you want, but I'll back off if, you want to go off with your ex-boyfriend, that's fine. All that's completely gone, because now all of his interactions with Mary, like when she's sitting there in the hospital bed and he's talking to her and he's saying, it's fine. People all do kind of things like that. I understand. I've seen the bathroom look worse than that. Like, I mean, he's so jittery, and there's almost like a people-pleasing aspect to it that again, doesn't feel disconnected from anything. I'm just kind of like, okay, that's where Norman is in his life right now. He's at his just most heightened and least grounded, because he knows too much and yet knows nothing, because he's completely lost and doesn't know a way out. And maybe that's why we still root for him. I mean, it's it's hard for it not to feel problematic nowadays, like watching it with 2025 eyes and watching Norman and everything that he's doing, and understand that I spent most of my life watching this movie going, poor Norman. When now I'm just kind of like, you need help, buddy. Like, you need to listen to Roberta Maxwell. You need to. I love that Diana Scarwood and you have this incredible bond, but maybe she could visit you at the sanitarium. Maybe she can be, one of those women who has a relationship with a guy who's incarcerated until he, 22 years later, he gets it back, and then you can have a life together. I don't know, but I'm kind of, I think in this particular setting, I was the least on Norman's side in the sense that like just leave him alone. I think in the past I used to really want people to just stop hassling him. You're agitating him, you're making it worse. And I don't think that way anymore.
Well, that's ironic, seeing as how you're talking about Tracy just being this antagonistic force throughout the movie.
Well, because she's not. That's the thing. She's not introduced as a hero either, and I love that about the movie. I love the fact that she's this. You brought up Gale Weathers, and we all love Gale. And one of the things we love about Gale is her boldness. So and that's something that I actually really appreciate in Tracy, particularly in this sitting. I was watching her and I was thinking, she just wants to dig and get at the truth. And her sympathy towards Norman is right there on the surface, but it doesn't mean he should get away with anything. I think that there's this blind eye the town has decided to turn when she talks to Sheriff Hunt and Chef Statler in the diner, and they're both like, you need to just kind of mind your own business, little lady. And she's like, I've got a cigarette. I don't mind my own business. That kind of thing. But the way she sits there and it kind of implores Norman to try and like appeal to the things that may have like brought him to this point, and like how people might see him. Like these are questions that he should be asking, probably in therapy, probably not with a reporter. So in that vein, I think the fact that she's not a therapist like Pogue originally wanted to write for Norman, the fact that she's a reporter who was also trying to serve herself. That was another thing. The studio didn't want Roberta Maxwell to play that part. They wanted like a young, more quote unquote fuckable actress to play that part. And I think Tony Perkins was like, we have Diana Scarwade, we have the two women I kill, we have plenty of tits and ass on the screen, we don't need every woman to scratch that itch. And he had worked with her before on another movie, I forget which one, but they had a working relationship together. He knew she could handle the part. I think she did a really, really good job playing it. But one thing that I think she
had sex appeal. Like she's an older lady, but she turned on little Duke in the bar there. Like he was interested, and that was such a great moment too. And how she's just like the repartee, just sort of like fuck off. Like I'm not interested. But then once she found out, I should like
I'll buy you a drink.
Both of their dialogue. Like when he like threw the matches down, just like you need them to like what does he say?
You're about as warm as a cry for help.
Yeah. But then as soon as the opportunity's there, it's just like, oh, actually, I'm gonna buy you a drink now. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Oh
and
my
the desperation to like satisfy this thing. Like, well, I need to land this story. Like they wanted it to be a young idealistic reporter, but with her, I kind of like the fact that she's kind of Gale with a few more miles on her, and living in a different time where men, prevailing heads that can make decisions like this can say Janet Leigh doesn't have sex appeal anymore and she's too long in the tooth to headline a movie. So, but Tony Perkins isn't. Those are the same people making the decision or wanting to make the decision like, no, Roberta Maxwell's too old because, Duke needs to be after her. It's like, Duke will fuck anyone. Duke is not a man with standards.
Duke is like, he kind of gives me like a creepy Jason Priestley vibe.
Oh, okay. Kind of. I mean, he's a little bit. I don't know. He's got a little bit more like plushness to his face, but I can see what you mean. Yeah. Like I remember my first experience seeing Jeff Fahey in anything was The Lawnmower Man. And I remember thinking, who is this goofy guy in the beginning? Because he's basically playing Doofy from Scary Movie in the first part of it. But like doing, he's turning it out. Like, I'm like, okay, I see you. And then he gets sexy and he starts, mowing the lawn with his shirt off.
Like Doofy at the end of the movie.
Like Doofy at the end of Scary Movie. Exactly. So I remember when I saw him in this, I was just kind of like, oh, wow, didn't know he could do that. He's still kind of sexy, but also kind of, I mean, he doesn't look like he smells good once in this movie. No. But
isn't that what was the one the baton twirler girl says to the one guy, just like you saying, but like he smells terrible because he's like never changed out of that.
Out of the jersey.
Yeah. What was this party like? Were these high school kids?
I get the impression that it was a high school. They talked about like how Fairvale High, I believe, was going up against Central, and this was the big homecoming football game. And because it's such a small town, I assume they don't have much to celebrate or to, so any excuse to like drink and party afterwards. They're going to go to the game, then they're going to go to the place like the Bates
So
Motel
these weren't
where
high
no
school.
cops are going to be
weren't.
around. Well, I think there were, but there were also these adults. Like he was talking, I guess they were alumni, this guy and this girl, because she was talking about how she wasn't a cheerleader, she was a majorette.
Yeah.
And he's saying, you can sit on my... It's like, what? You can sit on my... And she's like, what?
Twirl on my...
You twirl on my baton, and then they're just,
Okay, I wasn't sure, because it's just like this is what's passing as high school students, and like people are criticizing the 90s with their like 26-year-olds playing teenagers, but then we have this here, so if they're alumni, okay.
They're like the high school equivalent of townies.
Yeah,
townies. And the reason that guy, I remember seeing, I think it was in the Psycho Legacy, they interview that guy because the reason he got the part was because of his laugh.
Yeah.
Because Tony Perkins saw him in some LA theater somewhere playing a Buddha, and he just laughed the whole time. And he was like, that's the laugh I want in the movie. So laugh, folks. If you're in a play or whatever you're in, do it full out, because the next Tony Perkins or Osgood Perkins now could be sitting there watching you and go like, I need that face, get me that girl, or whatever.
Yeah. He needs to call me.
He needs to call me. But so what I like is just like, as far as Roberta Maxwell with Tracy, I think I like the fact that she's also kind of got her own desperate selfishness. She's not necessarily a hero coming in like, with white flags waving at the end, because she's also got, her agenda, but she doesn't quite know what she's getting into, because one of the things that I love that Roberta Maxwell plays, I think, again, finally she reaches the heights that Jeff Fahey and Diana Scarwood and Tony Perkins had been reaching the whole movie. She does it when she's in the house. And the first line, when she discovers Maureen, it's just the most repetitive thing. I wrote it down because I wasn't going to remember all the adjectives, but she's just like, you dumb, stupid, naive girl. I wanted like 6 more adjectives. Like, you dumb,
I thought she was just going to call her like a dumb
headstrong,
slut.
Selfish. I like that she...
Yeah.
It felt almost like mercy, like almost, not even mercy, but like a weird kind of sympathy. Like, God, I tried my best to save you, and now you're going off running to this guy, knowing, what he's capable of, and now look where you are. She could have had a soliloquy there. But
I love that she has the tire iron too.
She's not dumb.
Yeah, no, she's a smart cookie.
Yeah, but her discovery of like Mother Bates upstairs, even before that, she's just like, but Emma Spool wasn't your mother, and neither are you. It's so incredible. And then she sees Emma Spool and with a big soap opera open hand, and just like, look what's become of you, and I'm gonna rattle off more exposition as quickly as I can. And again, it that's camp because she's connected, but at the same time, like, she has to get all this information out as fast as possible. But it's all justifiable because at the other end of that room is a knife point, and it's gonna reach you if you don't get this into his head as soon as possible.
It's reminding me of something that we've covered, and I can't put my finger on it. But like another scene where someone is in hysterics, just explaining everything at the end.
Oh my God. I know what you mean. Yeah, but I can't think of which one it was. Damn it. Shit. It'll come to us.
Yeah.
Maybe not while we're recording.
Where they're trying to have empathy for the killer at the end. And it's not Friday the 13th Part 2, because Ginny never got that theatrical with
that would have been hilarious. Like,
no, I don't want that. That's perfect as it is.
No, you know what? That's what Tracy should have done. She should have like taken Mother's gown and just put it on.
Oh, you know what it's okay. I remember what it is. I remember it's Alicia Cuthbert in House of Wax.
Oh, right.
When these come, it's just like, you were the good twin. It was Beau.
Yeah, right.
And then I just like, please don't kill me. Ah!
Who wore it better? We need another one of those. We haven't had one in a while. Yeah. I could use another one of those, like, exposure dumps, exposition dumps at the end. Yeah. But Anyway, another thing that I appreciate, kind of like in this same moment, is just like we finally get. I mean, I guess we got it in the first movie, but not like in a way that, I don't know, satisfies the way this movie does. We saw Tony Perkins in the dress with the wig on and everything like that, but it was so far away. And then by the time he gets into the foreground, he's making that face where he was supposed to be screaming, but it just looks weird now, and it's great.
You can always get that from Vince Vaughn and the...
I can always get that. But anyway.
We always have Vince Vaughn.
Has Vince Vaughn ever worn like a pink kimono and a horrible Party City blonde wig? In Psycho.
Was there some sort of like cross-dressing in Freaky? I'm trying to remember.
I don't think so.
Because
not on his part.
They just swapped bodies, so it was like
they just swapped bodies.
But
and
like
he was in her body, like she wore kind of like a little bit more tough.
But it was still
ass kicker.
But it was still
or asexual. Could have gone either way. A guy could have worn that too. Yeah. But I don't think he wore anything.
He just wore like the same like grubby sweats throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. Which makes it all the more endearing when he's sitting there with the teenage boy who's in love with the girl, and or crunching on her at least, and they're both just kind of sitting there awkwardly, and all I can think is like, boy, he must smell bad.
So bad. Yeah.
Jeff Fahey could have played that role, the reveal of Norman, like in his mother's garb, like first of all, I love the fact that it's a manic smile when we first see that close up of him when Tracy turns around, and also because for the first time I always saw it as a manic smile, like hello, but for the first time I thought, oh my god, he's doing the best he can to look like the Skull mother, like with the teeth, like at the end of the first Psycho, and it worked. Like his face is frozen, and he can look creepy when he wants to. I also love just like as she's like going up the stairs, like backing up the stairs, with her exposition. Like she makes the picture crooked, and he takes it and positions it back, and straightens it again. And I'm just kind of like, oh my god, that's so mother baby.
There's a lot of like really nice nuances throughout. One of my favorites is when it's towards the end when Tracy is back at the diner and she's talking to the chef owner, and what's our favorite waitress? What's her name? Myrna. And he's like, they're talking about Mrs. Spool, and he's just like, she was the best waitress I ever had. And then Myrna kind of like just leers over at him. But then she knows. But I feel like in her mind, she's just like, I fucking work so hard here. She doesn't have the best attitude, but she gets the job done.
I love Lee Garlington. She also told one of my favorite Tony Perkins director stories. And this is the thing. It was for a scene. I remember when she was explaining it, I was like, I think I remember that scene. And then I went back to it. I was like, you didn't, like, there was no reason for him to do what he did, but I'm so glad that he did. I'll explain. She just basically said they're sitting there with Tracy. Yeah. She and Chef Statler. And she's asking about Emma Spool, so they're giving her the lowdown on Emma Spool and about how she did time, like in a facility before that because she wasn't quite right in the head. Mm-hmm. And they're just giving her information. Tony Perkins pulled Lee Garlington aside, Myrna, and told her, like, okay, the next take, a guy that you have had a crush on, you've waited on him for like the last 3 years, and you've just been in the hopes that like one day he'd ask you out. He finally asked you out. But the thing is, you have 15 minutes to get out of here, get home, get ready, and get to his place. Now go. Because he wanted there to be something for her as an actress, whether it read on screen or not, something for her to play about, like, rather than just kind of sitting there plunked and going, well, this is the backstory on Emma Spool, I'll tell you. He wanted, and when I watched the scene, because she's a good actor, I with like a magnifying glass, I'm like watching her, and I can see like she wants to tell her what she needs, but she's also kind of like, bouncing a little bit, like kind of like, all right, so you got what you need? Because I need to go. Like and again, it doesn't push the story forward any, but it grounds the actors. It gives them something to do. It keeps them continually interested. And the stories that I've heard about him as a director are just like that. He absolutely seemed to just kind of understand how to make everybody feel immersed in what they were doing and feel passionate about it. I remember there was a story about they had set up a train track that they were going to put like this contraption on for the camera to just kind of dolly it along for a shot one day, and it was part of their shot list. The entire crew like set it up. They spent, I guess, like an hour, putting it together or whatever. And he comes over and he's just looking at it, Tony Perkins, and he's just like, guys, I don't think I'm going to need that today. And then immediately, usually you'd hear from a crew kind of like, really? Or, well, you could have told us that before, but we'll, something. And instead they were just like, okay, sir, we'll clean it right up. And immediately there was like this dutiful sense of nobility, like everybody, it was all about pleasing Tony and also, but at the same time, not like in a fear-based way, just in a like, he's the boss, he knows what he's talking about, he speaks our language, so we can, so I don't know, so there's respect, there's just like this layer of respect that happens. So I don't know, I hear those stories and it just gives me such affection.
Would have been funny if they were like, would have been nice if you told us this earlier, and then he said, nobody asked me.
And then Pogue is on set that day. He goes, aha! I've been wondering what Maureen's line should be before she leaves, and that's it. But I mean, even though I think I started to say earlier, like with Kat Shea, like even with her, I think she had the kind of one of the worst stories. He put her in after she dies. He made her. That's really her flopping down onto the ground, and there was like a rubber mat, but still, like it's one of the hardest things you could ever ask someone to do is to fall forward onto their stomach with their eyes open into the camera in a close-up, and their eyes cannot blink or look in any particular direction, and the take goes on from the moment she plops down there. And they did it like 3 times, and apparently she didn't blink or move her eyes once. And she kind of became his favorite after that, apparently. He kept calling her his leading lady. and then after that, he put her in ice. That when you see the corpse with the blood ice that, we mentioned. Later on, there's a reveal of her in there. That's not all makeup that made her blue like that. Like she said, like parts of her that were not made up when she got out of that ice. Because he put her in there, she was claustrophobic. He closed the lid on her, and then she heard them just conversing about other matters, as far as the shot was concerned. And they didn't get to her for a while. And then by the time they got to her, she was chilled, and then they got her out, and she noticed the parts that hadn't been made up were blue. And I was like, oh, but thing is, she only has real fond memories about working with him. Like she doesn't walk out of a situation like that going like, and that piece of shit, I would get your own ass in ice, or you saying something like that. Like I don't know, I just get the impression. I know he studied a lot. I know it meant a great deal to him. I knew it felt like it was kind of probably be a new chapter in his career was filmmaker, and I think he was built for it. I would have loved to have seen what else he would have come up with in the future, but that just wasn't in the cards.
This was his only directed movie?
As far as I can remember, I'm going to double check because I want to get that right. But
there's also after that kill, and he walks back into the parlor, all of the stuffed birds and like the owl are glaring at him, or he's just like reacting to it.
Right.
Maybe a little like Evil Dead 2, but also it's kind of given me David Lynch Twin Peaks, which would have come after, but just like the owls watching. Yeah.
Totally. And there was one other feature. It's called Lucky Stiff. Here's a brief premise. A plump loser, after being left at the altar by his fiancée, is invited to Christmas dinner by a beautiful woman, but her family are cannibals who intend to have him as the main course.
Okay, so it started off as like a romantic comedy, and then it turned into horror.
Yeah, I guess. Written by someone named Pat Proft, who I'm not familiar with. But okay, now I know to look for that.
Okay, 4.7 out of...
Yeah. It doesn't look like it's streaming anywhere. I'm curious what kind of business it did. Wait, let me just see. Filming locations. That's not what I'm looking for. I can't find any. No, I can't find any specs as far as like the business it did. So that means it probably just kind of fell by the wayside. The fact that this is the first I'm hearing about it should probably say a lot.
Lee McCloskey is in it. He's from Inferno, Argento. Just looking at the cast here.
I know Joe Alasky from that series Out of This World about the little alien girl who could stop time. He was her Uncle Beano. He was in the movie.
Lynn Shay is in it.
Oh,
there you go.
Oh, there she is.
Bratty Kid's mom.
Bratty Kid's mom. I wonder if it was produced by New Line.
Maybe, yeah.
Who knows? But okay. It doesn't look like it's streaming on any platforms, but I'll look for it. Maybe it's at the library or something. But yeah, that was 1988. That was 2 years after this one was released, and then there was nothing after that.
Well, I mean, he died in
92.
92? Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, okay, we did. There was one you mentioned. Jeff Fahey giving you like a Jason Priestley thing. There was a point in the movie when they're in cabin 12, not the lamps scene, but the scene where Norman discovers him there with Mother and everything. Yeah, the Woody Woodpecker.
They're all gonna laugh at you.
Yeah,
stop laughing at me, Mother, because that's what she
right.
Sounds like.
There's something about the level at which Jeff Fahey's playing in that particular scene that gives me Bill Moseley, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Like, just because of you could just sell an acre.
Well,
you know,
which came out first though? Like they're the same year.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that one ripped off the other. I'm just saying that it was reminiscent to me. I was like, wow, Jeff Fahey could have played Bill Moseley's role, and
or
Bill Moseley could have played Jeff Fahey's role. Yeah, I would have paid to see either one of those. Like, they should do something in repertory where they trade roles every other performance. You know, some kind of two-hander play with the two of them. That would have been great. But ultimately, like with this, I like I say, the first time I saw it, I was kind of fascinated, and I've had varying reactions to it over the years. Sometimes I'm in the mood for this more than I am for Psycho 2, and sometimes I'm more in the mood for Psycho 2 than for this. It's all about what appetite you want to satiate at that particular moment. And with this one, I think, I don't know, I think it all comes down to the fact that I root for those crazy kids to run that motel together. You know, this sweet little Maureen, because she's really... It's all melodrama that's happening to her, and even like when they're connecting, it's melodrama. It feels like they're on nighttime television with each other. Like, that's the part that actually feels like TV to me, when they're like clinking glasses in that restaurant and he asks her to dance and stuff like that. I just kind of feel like they're in their own little rom-com in their heads, and it makes me giggle. You know, like that kind of thing. It's like, oh, and I love that he teaches her to dance in the slowest box step imaginably ever in celluloid, because it's supposed to go slow, quick, quick, slow, quick, slow. But he's going slow, quick, slow, quick, at exactly the same rate. So they're both just kind of like bouncing around, and then eventually they're just step touch, because they're overcome by their lust for each other. These, you know, sexual awakenings that they're experiencing with each other. I think that's another thing, is that they both feel really fucked up, but really conservative in a lot of ways, like old-fashioned. And so they're kind of like a perfect match. And I think that's why I'd like to see them both experience some kind of pleasure and really experience it with each other, because I don't feel like there's anything either of them, evidently, that they could find out about the other that would ever make them judge them, you know. Mother intervening, that's another story. But if Norman had just been Norman, they could have just hooked it up and just lived a long life together.
There's a possible sequel where Norman undergoes therapy and manages to get Mother on like almost like a werewolf cycle, where it's just like these days of the month, we have to like lock ourselves up in chains because that's when Mother comes in.
I remember hearing Tony Perkins speak to this movie, though, because he accepted the fact that the box office wasn't great and that the reception, wasn't like all that in a bag of chips. But he tried. I saw him postulating like why might that be, and one of the reasons was he thought maybe it resembled the first movie too much. And I remember even one swap that happened. The first moments we're introduced to the movie are supposed to be Norman's, are supposed to be the house, the belly of the beast paperback that's just sitting there, blowing in the wind, with the Bates Motel looking more desolate and bereft than it ever has before, with literal tumbleweeds and whatnot. But and then his little steps coming in, retrieving the dead birds and everything, that was supposed to start the movie, and he's decided to start with her because he wanted to echo the first movie more so, with like, here we have a blonde ingenue who's in a situation way over her head, and now we're going to follow her on the road, and then we're going to introduce a young man into into her wake. Because that was another thing that I got, in addition to Gail Weathers, which I totally saw for Tracy. I also thought she's kind of like a Lila Crane stand-in, in that she's a little bit more no nonsense than the preceding female character, who's a principal. She just kind of wants to get to the bottom of things, and therefore seems to be a little less sympathetic, but the actress finds ways to keep her humanity intact. So she's not a villain, she's just somebody who's disrupting the natural order, or the unnatural order, of this environment at the Bates Motel and the Psycho House, So I don't know. And then there's countless examples throughout the movie. I don't even have to list them, because all I have to do is watch the movie, and if you want a steady drinking game, every time you see something that feels like a direct visual reference to the first Psycho, take a drink. You'll be asleep by the end of the movie.
Oh my God. I was like trying to watch it last night, and this is just, again, me and like the time I choose to start watching movies, but I kept falling asleep. And I would like wake up, rewind it, and then watch through it, and inevitably fall asleep again. And I just got to a point where I was like, I'm too tired, I'm just gonna watch this tomorrow.
Okay. But how long do you think you'll wait before you see it again?
I don't know. I couldn't really answer that question, but it's not. I like it a lot. It's not. Jumping back to what we were saying earlier, is that even though the franchise becomes less and less as we go through each sequel, the original sets the bar so high. So it's not like it's a huge drop off. Like these are great movies as we go through. I think the remake is probably the epitomal low, but like that is
the
what
least
it is.
heart.
The
least heart to it.
I think I've only seen Psycho 4 the beginning once, so we'll cover that next for the Psycho movies. But I'm more eager to go watch Bates Motel, because I watched the first 2 seasons, and then I kind of life happens and you lose track of series that you're watching. So I'd like to, I'd probably have to start over, but just sort of get everything over again and get all the way through. I know that Rihanna plays Marion Crane.
Yeah, I didn't going in. So when she showed up, I was like, "Is that Rihanna? Is that Riri?" Yeah. Oh my God, and she looked good too. I was just kind of like, "Wow, Marion's got it going on." I understand why Norman is going to be aroused by her, but and then it's interesting how they handle it.
I mean, obviously, because that's all prequel, I guess, bleeding into the first movie, but did they reference any of the sequels?
No, because I won't spoil anything, but what I will say is I remember watching the first 4 seasons. I was thinking, like, I wonder if they'll do their own kind of remake and what that would look like, given like everything we've led up to. It feels like a natural progression. What the 5th season does kind of satisfies that and creates no need for there to be a remake. Like,
Yeah.
you're introduced to a large amount of action that you're just kind of like, well, it's happening, so
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
bother?
So it didn't do
Yeah.
the Hannibal thing of remaking the.
Well, because like Hannibal actually did a similar thing with season 3 with regard to Red Dragon, but not
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't get that far into season 3. Like season 3 of Hannibal, like
Oh, I love season
it was
3 of
really like kind of like I've tried to watch it twice and I just
Yeah.
same thing, I fall asleep.
Yeah.
And not for like when I am watching it, but it's just like it's kind of feels tedious at the start of it. So I mean,
yeah.
like I've heard it gets better. You've said it gets better towards the end, but I just one of these days I will.
Well, I'm also somebody who really loves that first half of season 3, which is what turns a lot of people off. I know you're not the only person I've heard who doesn't really favor that. And me, it's behavior based, it's amorphous, it's dreamlike. I'm just kind of like, what the fuck am I watching? And other people I think were, what the fuck am I watching? Could something happen, please? And I'm like, there is so much happening, but that's just me.
Okay.
So, I don't know how you'll feel.
Okay, so last thing to touch on because we didn't say anything, but how do you like the score for this movie?
Okay, because I looked it up. I didn't realize that Carter Burwell did the score. He's the same one who did the Where the Wild Things Are movie. These are some of my favorites. Being John Malkovich, Velvet Goldmine, Fargo, Fear, and
Like Mark Wahlberg
yeah,
Fear.
Yeah, and the OG Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie.
And I can hear that like in the Buffy, like anytime she's fighting the vampires, that like sort of like tingly bit of music, like you get it here. And I mean between the 3 movies, Psycho 1, 2, and 3, it's just like the scores could not be any different. So I mean this one definitely has like a more slashery vibe to it. And I think like Jerry Goldsmith did too, but there's more like, sweeping melodies in there, like it's
really somber. It feels like Sad Memories.
Yeah.
Jerry Goldsmith's score for Psycho 2.
And then the original, the Bernard Herrmann is, obviously it's a lot of fiddles. Getting the fiddles in there.
Oh, there's fiddles going up and down like that.
But there's definitely more of a sneaky, almost like it feels criminal, It just like there's an aspect to it that just like something
Intrepid,
is afoot. But this one is just like it's really going for the scary.
Yeah, it's got this weird synth thing going on with these chirps, these weird kind of like, but I also love the fact that it's reintroduced the opening theme that we kind of like get the title card and poor Maureen. I just feel like that's who she is. She's poor Maureen, just gliding across the screen to her fate. It starts off very synth and very like you said, horror opening credits. But then later on, almost immediately, we see Norman playing the theme on his piano as though it were classical music. And then we hear it again. Oh shit! Where was the other time we heard it? Oh, it was on the jukebox in the town bar when Duke goes in. It's playing. Wah, 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 wah. It's really kind of like really synth, like really like, hey, let's dance. It's the 80s forever. That kind of feeling to it. So I love how versatile the theme is, but I also love the fact that like there's it doesn't quite have the sadness. I feel like there's a little more risk to it. Jerry Goldsmith was just somber, and this feels much more. I'm walking with my trauma, and something bad could happen at any moment. That's what this score communicates to me. Yeah. So I appreciate it for all of that. Also, just I you were talking about Hitchcock and it being like kind of like a high bar to follow with these sequels and everything, and I couldn't agree more. I think that's one of the things that feels kind of jarring in the beginning, particularly when we see Norman meet Duke. That's when I feel it the most, because you feel that Hitchcockian thing of when my camera moves, I need you to move. And even though Tony Perkins is the one, he's in the driver's seat, but he's also acting. It's a hard line to walk to realize it on the page, of your shot list, and then realize it as an actor and make it feel authentic. Because like he moves from one end of the room to the other to touch the wall and say, "You'll work days mostly. I prefer the nights." And then all of a sudden that shot of just the owl, and he moves into position and just sits, with it in the background. And I think he says, "I don't intend on being here too long," Duke says. And he's just like, "No one ever does." And it's supposed to be foreboding and, so creepy. And instead, I think another thing that doesn't help it is I know Tony Perkins was a huge fan of ADR, because he thought he could even enrich his performance, like make it even better by trying to sync. He loved the synchronicity. I think it was a puzzle for him. And in that entire exchange, it's all ADR. You can tell that like Jeff Fahey's voice is in the room.
Yeah.
Tony Perkins is in a soundstage somewhere. So all of that, like it's a charming aspect that I look forward to when I watch it now. But if somebody were to criticize it, I'd go, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a disconnect, but would I change anything about this movie? Not really. I like watching it. That's what I have to say.
That's fair. Yeah, I like that. All right, well, let's mosey on over to the cherry picker.
It's not like we killed people. On purpose.
All right, we need a cherry on top, and
I mean,
yeah, it's
been Anthony Perkins the whole time, and it should be again.
Norman, yeah. Was it for 1 and 2 as well?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we did him for both because he's the crucial ingredient.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, we'll have to refer to the chart, Amethyst chart of just like all the backlog of who it is. But yes, Norman Bates. Anyhow, okay. So last time we talked about A Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Interesting that the Numb theme that carries over between movies.
Yeah.
But I nominated Mrs. Jordan. You nominated Dr. Moore, and across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, the final tally was 272 for Mrs. Jordan versus 150 for Dr. Moore.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this. I'm very invested.
Very invested. Just a little side note. You got the popular vote on Instagram.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me when it shifts from one platform to the other, because we've had that before where on Patreon it's sometimes they're all on your side. It's just like, what the hell, guys. But that's why you gotta vote everywhere. You gotta make sure that you're adding up those
that your voice is heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Amethyst Frost. Oddly enough, I know this movie isn't a fan favorite, but I'm with Eddie as a defender for Dream Child. It was actually the first nightmare movie I saw as a kid, and Greta's face stuffed full of food was burned into my 9-year-old brain for the rest of that week. It definitely has flaws. Freddy's intended scheme to feed the souls of all 4 of Alice's friends to Jacob so that Freddy could be reborn is barely even alluded to in the finished film. But the art direction and Lisa Wilcox's performance as Alice holds it together for me. Anyway, both of these choices deserve the claw for wronging Alice the way they do, so they're about on par with each other. But I vote for Dr. Moore because I love the soap opera drama of Mrs. Jordan threatening Alice for custody of her baby, and really the entire scene with Alice's dad stepping up and defending Alice, Alice standing up for herself, Mark side-eyeing this woman, etc. Dr. Moore didn't give me any of that.
I hear that. Well, thank you.
Thomas Baker. I picked Mr. Jordan. But I get where she's coming from. Oh, I think that was supposed to be
Mrs. Jordan.
But I get where she's coming from. Her son just died, and she thought that Alice wouldn't be able to take care of herself and the baby. Also, if we do get a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, it should be a requel that follows adult Jacob, played by Ashley Zuckerman, and his son as they both move back home to Springwood and live with Alice. The movie should be called A Nightmare on Elm Street: The Dream Demon, but this is just a dream, pun intended, that I wish could come true in the near future. I don't know who any of those people are, so I'll just go along with it.
Do you want me to map it out for you, or you want to keep going?
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Dylan Jameson, Mrs. Jordan gets my vote. I don't even remember the doctor, but Mrs. Jordan wanting to take her grandchild away from its mother to raise as her own son never sat right with me. Sean Prinsick. I don't remember either of these people. For the longest time, this was my least favorite in the franchise. That is until I rewatched the remake and realized how bad it could actually get. My love for Elm Street 4 and deep personal connection to the character of Alice makes this film so hard to even consider watching. I may have the 7-film collection, but rest assured, Elm Street 5 will only continue to gather dust because I refuse to see it again. Alice deserved better. However, I will say Alice beating Freddy Krueger twice does make her the definitive arch nemesis of Freddy Krueger in my eye. Nancy Thompson gave it her all, but turning her back on him did nothing to the original. And in Dream Warriors, she died. What we really need is a Nancy, Kristen, Alice team-up movie. David Rowling. I don't remember either of these characters. Jonathan K. The Doctor. I don't like snitches, particularly when they are violating their Hippocratic oath.
Yeah, there you go.
James Barant. Dan Mother. Definitely. She wanted to take Alice's son away from her, which wasn't right. Yeah. And Mr. K. Churns, this might have been the first horror movie I ever saw. My entire childhood had a memory of a motorcycle killing a man, but couldn't figure out what the movie was until I bought the DVD box set in the late 90s and realized this was that movie. And my vote is for Mrs. Jordan.
Okay.
All right. So I will take first dibs for Psycho 3. And I mean, I don't really have to think too hard about this. I'm going to go with the lecherous Duke Dwayne. Dwayne the Duke Johnson.
Yes.
For making, I mean, I know it's Jeff Fahey. Is that how you pronounce it? But
that's how I pronounce it.
But for giving me this vision of like just like evil Jason Priestley.
Okay.
But I mean, he is the sleaze of this movie, and I don't mind some sleaze, but like I don't know. He's just the one that needs to die. What was the whole thing? He took the Mrs. Spool's body at the end because he was trying to
blackmail Norman.
Yeah, like what was his ultimate plan there? Anyway, he was
just money.
Yeah, he was put in this movie to be killed, so that he shall be.
Watch the guitar.
Yeah.
But also because let me help you, because also that's another thing. It's a point I didn't get to make in the body of the pod proper. No, he did the flashlight thing to Maureen, and then said nothing's gonna happen to you and everything like that. So if you start to think like, okay, maybe he was a little road weary. I mean, that's extreme, but maybe he's just kind of a shithead. But at least he apologized. You get to think that he's a shithead right away again when he's with Red and dumps her out. He has a thing about whether women sleep with him or not, just completely abandoning them, humiliating them, in the worst way possible, making them regret ever giving him the time of day, and then doubling down on it, because not only does he lock her out of the room naked, but then he throws her, he throws her down in a fall that looks like it really hurts. Like when she falls off the platform over the log and everything, that looks like it hurts. He whips her clothes onto her face and slams the door on her. And
Do you want
that's
to
the
just
thing
take
that
my
always-
nomination? It just seems like
No,
you
no.
really
I'm just helping you. No, but I'm helping you because that's what we do. We help each other here at the Cherry Picker. No, because I didn't get to make this point before, but also because it really glared at me this time. I was just like, because that's the thing that gets me. It's just like her humiliation afterwards, like her regret, her just kind of like choked back cries as she's like putting her clothes back on and stuff. I'm like, you poor thing.
And also, I mean, we can't prove whether it was Norman or him, but I'm pretty sure he left the toilet seat up. So, men.
Oh, men. For me, I'm in a bit of a bind, but I think I know which way I'm gonna lean. I don't know how she's built though, but because the one I'm not choosing is Sheriff Hunt because neglect. Maybe I should choose him, but I mean, people died because of him. Maybe I should choose him.
Well, now I'm curious who she is.
Because the one who I think is, I don't know, it's a more fun choice, is the manic nun who at the beginning of the movie is just shrieking, "You'll burn in hell for this! You'll burn in hell!" What, to Maureen? I think she's just like nun in tower or something like that. That's what she's billed as. But I want to pick her because, like, number one, it wasn't Maureen's fault. You're talking to a suicidal person who's screaming at the top of her lungs that there's no God. She obviously needs help and wants help. This is the way she's asking for it. And your means of, like, trying to kind of, like, de-escalate the situation way too late is by telling her she's going to burn in hell. And then later on when Maureen is speaking to Father Brian, her father confessor / therapist, she talks about, I believe this nun talking about how, like, sinful thoughts are, something to be ashamed of and all of that, and just basically seems like she shamed her the entire time she was there. So I feel like she's the first domino of the movie for Maureen, for poor Maureen. Like, Norman was going to Norman no matter what. So I don't know. I feel like I want to go with manic nun in tower.
Well, it's either Sister Margaret, Sister Catherine, bell tower nun, or uncredited nun.
I don't remember. Oh shit. I told Zack while we cut, I didn't think about this at all, so I would have gotten the nun's name beforehand. But
I mean, if you look up if you look up the script, it might tell you who it is.
It's the nun who says, "You'll burn in hell for this. You'll burn in hell." Oh, because that was another thing that I liked was in the beginning, like, it wasn't even an allusion to Psycho, but watching the nun fall down the bell tower, I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm getting vertigo from this, just like the scope of it and everything. Like, pretty cool.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
Well, we'll figure out her name.
Okay, so the nun. I'm going with manic nun in tower, whatever her name might be.
Manic nun. All right, well, there you go. Your choices are Dwayne versus Manic Nun. And you can cast your vote on Patreon. Even if you're supporting us or not, you can head over there and throw an extra vote towards the final tally. But if you are over there, go ahead and throw a little support. We really appreciate it, and it helps the podcast go a long way. You can also vote on Instagram. So follow us at the Cherry Picker Pod, and you can look for the polls in our stories every week. And also here on YouTube, if you are watching, posts are once a week, so you can vote here. And if you are watching and you would prefer to listen, the RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. But anyway, like, subscribe, follow, do all that stuff. Get us up there. And gosh, what else is there? Oh yeah,
where can they
find you?
They can find me on Instagram, and I'm back on Letterboxd. I've dropped a few new movie reviews, so check those out. Both of them are Edward is Truth, one word, traditional spelling. How about you, Zack?
You can also find me on Letterboxd, Zack Cherry, ZACK space CHERRY, which incidentally is also my main YouTube channel. So head over there and subscribe as well, if you please. Yeah. And Instagram is at RetroBitchFace, all one word. And Twitter, Zack Cherry 8.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think we have an exact title lockdown for next week. Did we?
We don't.
Did we?
We did, but if you don't want to commit, then we can.
I don't remember. We'll have to discuss it. It's going to be a mystery.
Okay, we'll discuss it.
It'll be a mystery. But anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will be right back.